Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Apologists in Detroit blogcast again. I am your host, Christopher Samuel, and I just want to say thank you to you all for tuning in and checking out my comments on popular issues in the church. Today's blogcast is about something that has been on my radar for a while, partially because of my background growing up in the type of churches that I grew up in, as well as the fact that the type of churches that I go to now is so much of a contrast, so different than the type of churches I grew up in. But kind of get to the point. This video here is going to be about supernaturalism. I don't know. I guess I would call it hyper supernaturalism, and I guess I have to do a little explaining with that. But what I mean by hyper supernaturalism is when people talk about miracles and healings and miraculous events happening in the church, and them being following all believers today, or that being like the sign that a person is a Christian. And first of all, I like to say I understand why people believe it. It actually says that in the long ending of Mark, it actually says that. And although academically, or that some people don't think that the long ending of Mark is actually a part of the original text. I think that I once read that first century church father Irenaeus actually quoted the long ending of Mark in some of his writings. So although it doesn't appear in the older copies of manuscripts that we currently have, it was commented on early, so I think that's relevant enough to, give it a pass, and just for the sake of argument, say, okay, we'll just say it's a part of the scripture just for the sake of argument. That being said, there's a couple reasons that I don't subscribe to the belief of what I call hyper supernaturalism, the belief that miracle signs and wonders follow all believers today in our common events. First of all, there are practical reasons, and on the practical side, there's the fact that I don't see a lot of these things happening. You hear of churches that talk about these things happening. There are a few local churches who have like televangelist ministries, and they claim these things happening. But to the best of my knowledge, there is no verified proof of these things actually being true. And there are organizations like the Christian Research Institute who actually research these types of things, and they haven't found any evidence of any of these so-called miracles being true. And I think that that's not something that we should just ignore. I think that that's something that we should consider very strongly. The fact that there is no evidence for like televangelists like Benny Hinn, who they have researched, and others, where people who claim to heal people regularly or to see things and have visions and dreams regularly, but none of these things are verified. I think that's a strong evidence against the fact that whether or not we should believe these things. And some people might say, but the Bible actually teaches that, and I think that all depends on how you interpret what the Bible actually teaches. I think that if I grant the fact that longing of Mark is actually in original part of the text, it could easily have been interpreted as to imply that the early the disciples, who Jesus was talking to at the time when he said those things, that these things would follow them, and as recorded in the scriptures, these things did follow them. It's also, I think, important to note that around the 60s, the late part of the first century, the church fathers stopped recording miracles, and you don't see miracles being recorded in the late first century church fathers' writings, or any time after that. Since you don't really see miracles being recorded, and I think that once again, that's a strong evidence for the fact that it's not something that commonly happens. I think this is a sensitive issue to some people, especially people that I know, and I'm not sure what value my opinion has with them at this point. Anyway, I think a lot of them notice that I don't necessarily subscribe to the same types of theology that I did in my youth and as I was growing up, and probably don't take a whole lot of what I say with much value anyway. But I think that I want to open a bridge. I want to open a bridge of dialogue between me and them. And part of the way that I'm doing this with this video, maybe they can watch this video, hear it, and if they have arguments against it, they can present their arguments against it, and we can dialogue better about this type of thing. But all in all, I truly believe that God is sovereign, and God can do whatever he chooses to do, meaning he can heal, he can create a miracle, he can do whatever he wants to do at whatever time that he chooses to do it. But I think it's disingenuous of us as Christians to say that God has done things that he hasn't done. I think that's the definition of blasphemous. Assigning or crediting something to God that God did not do. So I take blasphemy very seriously. And because of that, I choose to be very conservative in my approach to things like this. And although I believe that God can perform a miracle today just as much as he did in the days of Jesus, I look at things like the fact that, that one could interpret those passages as meaning the people who Jesus was actually talking to. And in that case, those passages were fulfilled. We don't see a lot of miracles these days that are verified miracles. And when you look at the Bible, like Luke, the first 3 or 4 verses and how it talks about these things were carefully investigated. The type of miracles that I would agree to call a miracle would be something that was carefully investigated, and there's very strong evidence that those things are true. And so these are the basic reasons why when I hear people talking about miracles and things like that today, I'm initially skeptical about them. It has nothing to do with me not believing that God can't do these things. It has all to do with whether or not God actually has done these things. And if so, praise be to God. Let's give him glory. And if not, God forbid that we take lightly the name of the Lord and blaspheme. Thanks again for tuning in and listening to this broadcast, and I hope to get some feedback on it. See what you guys think. Thanks. Bye.